Hey guys, welcome back to the Calvinist Contradiction, where we're back with another episode of Where is Calvinism in the Opening Narrative of the Bible. We're doing this to see if Calvinism is the true interpretation of the biblical text, the true theology in which we're supposed to render the biblical text, which I don't think anybody would have a problem with it if it was truly that. But we believe if it is the true interpretation of the Bible, then it would be clearly, coherently, consistently applied in the text. You would be able to find where it originates, which is Genesis 3, and you would be able to clearly, consistently, and coherently follow it through the text. Now, it hasn't been that way thus far. We're on chapter 40. Two of the biblical text. And so we're going to hop in here. We're going to read it. But first, I wanted to say thank you to everybody that responds in the comment section who participates in the comment section. I really appreciate it. I cannot get back to everybody. I try to hop on there when I can and respond. Sometimes I do videos, as I did in the last video. We responded specifically to our brother, Lawrence Stanley, I think his name was, and his writing that I don't understand Calvinist interpretation of dead equaling dead in sin equaling dead like Lazarus. And we went through and read 10 quotes from prominent pastors in Calvinism who are spouting this out. And we said, no, actually, it's probably you who doesn't understand this, my friend. So we do respond in video form. Also, wanted to just let you guys know that our family here in this country, where we've been for 10 years, sharing the love of Christ, we've opened 2 churches, is in the middle of a fundraising. We are being kicked out of this house, so you won't see this setting in the same way in the future for the second time in 3 years. And we are trying to raise the funds to secure a house here so that we don't get kicked out anymore. We also would have a better chance of getting a visa here. And so if you feel in your heart to give to this pledge, please email the email in the description below. It's anonymous. We won't know who gives. It's just a fleece unto the Lord to ask him what it is in the future, what he wants us to do, since we keep running into this problem. Also, we have a Advent devotional book coming out here on the 17th of September. It is doesn't have to do with Calvinism specifically. It just has to do with the New Testament doctrine of the Trinity rooted in the Old Testament. So where do we get our Trinity doctrine? It's from the Old Testament. And it's a book that centers around Advent, answering that question. And so if you would like a free copy of that book in exchange for a review, email me at the Calvinist Contradiction at gmail.com. I'd love to give you a free copy of it in exchange for a review on Amazon. And also, we're a crowdfunded ministry. Please pray about supporting us. Again, the biggest way to do that right now is through the pledge campaign. Love you guys. Without further ado, you can click on the link in the description section. We'll hop right into Genesis 42, coming off the heels of our teaching on Genesis 41, which we didn't see Calvinism there. So let's check it out here. I will show my cards up front and say there are passages here that people can render as a Calvinist interpretation, and we're not scared of that. We don't believe that that's the case because we haven't seen it, and it's not proven by anyone, which we've challenged in the comment section, to root their theology back into Genesis 3. They always go to Romans 8. They always go to Romans 9. Go and check and see if I'm lying to you. It is true. And so let's see here. This is Joseph's brothers sent to Egypt. Now Jacob saw that there was grain in Egypt. Doesn't say that Jacob was led by the Lord. Doesn't say that God made Jacob see it. Doesn't say anything like that, nor has it said anything like that. And Jacob said to his sons, why are you staring at one another? He said, behold, I have heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy some for us from that place. Now, again, we're going to just keep asking this question because our friend Lawrence Stanley, again, sorry, but I just saw this in the comment section. He said there is no free will. And so it doesn't talk about it. And so it's not in the Bible. Well, it never talks about sex, but obviously laying with people, going into people, even covering the feet is a euphemism for sexual genitalia. And so there's many things like this that go on in the biblical text. My computer's going to die. Hopefully we get through this. It's actually on red. I might have to plug it in real quick. Sorry, I didn't check this. Is actually a euphemism And so there's many places in the Bible that talk in euphemistic forms. I'm going to lay this down while I do this real quick. Sorry about this. In euphemistic forms about sexual encounters, but yet we don't just flat out deny that those things aren't true, that those things aren't in the Bible, as Calvinists kind of do with free will. They say it's not in the Bible, it never says it, although it alludes to it in many, many places. This being one of them, so we say, hold on. This being one of them, sorry about all that. I didn't want my computer to die on us. This being one of them. And so, are we not supposed to be able to say that it is alluding to free will, where it says, now Jacob saw that there was grain in Egypt? It never says that the Lord made Jacob. But see, every Calvinist, anybody with a deterministic, eternal decree, whatever baloney sausage they want to say it in Calvinist theology, has to render it that way, that the Lord, he makes Jacob see that there was grain in Egypt. And then he says, and then the Lord makes him say, behold, I have heard that there is grain in Egypt. The Lord made him say, go down there and buy some from that place. The Lord made them so that we may live and not die. The Lord made him say that. So you have to keep on plugging that in. You have to actually add to the scriptures what it doesn't say. And in this, hey, what's going on, brother? And so in this passage right here, it doesn't say any of that. And we're going to see later where it actually does. They do ascribe things to God. And so see what the Calvinists do is they're kind of just conflating where it doesn't say anything about God making them happen, and it conflates it with God when it says that it makes it happen. And so the problem is that when it does want us to realize what God is doing, it's just conflated and it doesn't matter because you keep on saying that, here it never ascribes God making Jacob see that there's grain in Egypt, but yet we're supposed to render it that way in the Calvinistic interpretation. So he says, go down there. Jacob sees that there's grain, go down there and get this, he says to his sons. And the 10 brothers of Joseph went down to buy grain from Egypt. But Jacob did not send Joseph's brother Benjamin with his brothers, for he said, I am afraid that harm will befall him. But Jacob did not send him. Okay, so not the Lord did not send him. You guys can write in the comment section too. I'll shout it out. So we have Kevin Thompson from Beyond the Fundamentals. Hey, brother. And we have Chris here too with us. And so here it says who is doing what. Okay. And that's important because the biblical writers chose when to say what God was doing and when not to say what God was doing. So we don't end up with a monster God like we have in Calvinism. That just every rape, every murder, every child abuse is from God's hand. It doesn't say that. It never says that in the text, and we've proven that for 42 chapters now. So, and he says, I am afraid. Not God made him say, I am afraid. Not God made him because he didn't want him to get hurt. It says, I am afraid that harm might befall him because that's what happened to Joseph. So the sons of Israel came to buy grain among those who were coming. So they came to buy grain among those who were coming, for the famine was in the land of Canaan also. So again, it's giving us, when we read the Bible as literature, it's giving us information. So we know why he doesn't want to send Benjamin, because of what happened in the biblical narrative earlier, right? So it all builds upon each other. And this is our whole point, is that if Calvinism was true, it would be explained in Genesis 3, where they say that total inability comes, unconditional election comes, limited atonement comes, irresistible grace comes from, and perseverance of the saints all come from Genesis 3, but yet they cannot plainly and clearly place it in that text. Oh, wait, you can, but it's so plain and clear that you need John Calvin, Pink, Matthew Henry's, you need all these commentaries, you need creeds, confessions, catechisms, You need everything to be able to see what's so plainly and clearly in the text. But then we say, well, show us in the text. I said, we can't do that. You need John Calvin's thing. And so if it was true that it was supposed to be rendered this way, it would have been brought forth in Genesis 3 and carried on, just like the story of Jacob's family, Isaac and Abraham, just like we know that Joseph's brother here. So now in the narrative, when he says, I'm afraid something might happen to my son, we know because something happened to his other son, Jacob. And so it's all building upon each other. Okay. And so that's reading the Bible as literature. Now, Joseph was a ruler over all the land. And then also we know that Canaan has a famine too, because it tells us that. Now, Joseph was the ruler over all the land. He was the one who sold to all the people in the land. And Joseph's brother came and bowed down to him with their faces on the ground. When Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, but he disguised himself to them and spoke to them harshly. And he said to them, where have you come from? And they said, from the land of Canaan. But Joseph had recognized his brothers, although they did not recognize him. Again, all this information is put here on purpose, intentionally, for us to be able to build a picture of what's going on in our mind. So we have Joseph, he's not recognized. We have the sons bowing down. That's going to be privy to just a couple verses later. All this information was specifically put here by the author to build theology, to build a narrative in our mind. But Joseph had recognized. Oh, wait, here we go. But spoke harshly to him, and he said to them, where have you come from? And they said, from the land of Canaan. But Joseph had recognized his brothers, although they did not recognize him. Joseph remembered the dream, so that's why it says they bowed down to him, which he had about them, and said to them, are you spies? You have come to look at the undefended parts of our land. And then they said to him, no, my lord, but we are servants and have come to buy food. We are all sons of one man. We are honest men. This is tongue in cheek, right? We are honest men. Your servants are not spies. Yet he said to them, no, but you have come to look at the undefended parts of the land. But they said, your servants are 12 brothers in all, the sons of the man of one man in the land of Canaan. And behold, our youngest is with our father today, and the one is no longer alive. So right there, when I said tongue in cheek, this happens a couple times in this chapter. Also, they say, "But we are honest men," and then literally lie, like one more right after that. Okay, well, he's no longer alive. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt, and they think he went down in slavery and died, maybe. But they're still speaking out both sides of their mouth. They're saying we're honest men, but we are. But there's no, they tell a lie right after that. So let's see. King James only said, I meant to ask you if you know Kevin Thompson. Kevin Thompson's ministry does sound familiar. If you give me a link, I can look at it. It really does ring a bell to me there, King James only, but I can't say that I recognize it unless I would see like a video or something. Or tell me what he's kind of famous for. Does he do stuff like I do? Is he a Calvinist? A little bit more context, and I'll respond when it comes up. And so we have this we're honest men, but then they lie. So Joseph said to them, and they're lying to the guy who actually knows that he's still alive because he is that man. And so what's he thinking when he hears all this? Again, all this is purposeful. All this is in the text so that we don't have to draw some whack bunk conclusion that God's actually orchestrating everything, even lying, even deceit. So God's making these guys lie that they're honest men and that they're dying so that Jacob realizes it, even though he already does. It just makes no sense. It's whack, trash theology. So Joseph said to them, it is as I said to you, you are spies. By this you will be tested, and by the life of Pharaoh you shall not go from this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of you that he may get your brother while you remain confined, that your words may be tested, whether there is truth in you. But if not, by the life of Pharaoh, surely you are spies. So he put them all together in the prison for 3 days. Again, 3 days is going to be privy in the Bible later, so they're building things. But in this context, they're just in there for 3 days. So now Joseph said to them on the third day, do this and live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers be confined in your prison. So he's switching the narrative here. He just said, you all be in the prison until one of them goes and gets them. Now he's flip flopping that. One of y'all stay, and the rest of you guys go. And go and care. Do this and live, honest men. Let your brothers be confined in your prisons. But as for the rest of you, go carry grain for the famine of your households and bring your youngest brother to me so your words may be verified and you will not die. So there's definitely like a connotation going on here that they may be put to death for being spies. And they did so. Then they said to one another, truly, we are guilty concerning our brother because we saw the distress of his soul when he pleaded with us, yet we would not listen. Okay, so this is important. I'm going to just stop here and let me check in what Chris is saying right here. It says, Chris from the Protestant View Live. I guess I take it for granted that people who speak against Calvinism know Leighton Flowers and Kevin Thompson. I'm pretty sure I know Kevin Thompson. I'm kind of new to understanding how bad Calvinism is. Yeah, it really is growing. I was just talking to somebody who was from this channel, who's helping me out with my book, who lives in Scotland, who was just talking about Eastern Europe, and she said, it's just growing like crazy there. It's growing like crazy here, and it's because the most money in all of missions, really, to be honest, is with the Calvinistic sect. That's being nice. And so here, truly we are guilty concerning our brother because we saw. So truly God is, we are guilty because God made us. So let's just render this Calvinistically. Why don't we? Doctrines of grace, Reformed Calvinism, however you want to do that. Truly we are guilty concerning our brother because God made us see the distress of his soul when God made him plead with us, yet God made us not listen. Therefore, this distress has come upon us, or therefore God has made this stress to come upon us. Is that the right rendering that we're supposed to render here? Or can we just read it plainly and clearly as the text goes? Surely, truly, we are guilty concerning our brother. Who's guilty? They are. Why? Tells us because we saw the distress of his soul when he pleaded with us, yet who is responsible here? Yet we would not listen. Therefore, this distress has come upon us. Now, Reuben answered them, saying, Did I not tell you, do not sin against the boy, and you would not listen? Okay, so remember, if we go back into the narrative, Reuben was going to save him. He was going to go and he was going to save him or one of them says, don't hurt him. And then I can't remember if it's Judah who actually goes back to the pit to find him and get him out, but he's not there. So I can't really remember, but we talked about that a lot when we did that. And so he steps up and says, I told you not to do this. So who are they blaming for this? In the narrative and time and space right here, it would be themselves. It would be their own sinful actions, their own free will choices. But wait, free will's not in the Bible, says Lauren Stanley out there, who wrote that in the comments just a couple days ago, says almost John Horan, all these other guys in the comment section who are Calvinistic. There's no free will in the Bible because it never says it. We're not supposed to render what they are ascribing to themselves by their own free will to themselves. We're not supposed to do that. It makes no sense. And so they're ascribing to him. Reuben ascribes it to him. So we'll just take it one more second. Reuben comes in here and he says, I told you not to do this. And now now this is coming on you. And so, but you would not listen. But God made you not listen is how you're supposed to render it, I guess. Now comes the reckoning for his blood. Yeah. That's what they are doing here. They did not know, however, that Joseph understood, for there was an interpreter between them. So they're probably speaking in like Hebrew or some other language, a Canaanite or whatever, and they think that Joseph only knows Egyptian because they're taking him as an Egyptian, but he can understand everything. That's Important information, again, in here by design. He turned away from them and wept. But when he returned to them, he spoke to them. He spoke to them. He took Simon from them and bound him before their eyes. Then Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with grain and to restore every man's money in his sack and to give them provisions for their journey. Who does all that? In the narrative, it tells us, and Joseph gave orders. Not God told Joseph to give orders. They could do that. We've read this over and over. When it ascribes something to God that they want us to know, that they want us to be privy to, the biblical authors make it known so that you don't walk away with trash heap theology that God just does everything all the time. And every rape, murder, as unimaginable as it may seem to us, from the killings of Dennis Rader to the death camps at Birkenau and Auschwitz, to even the rape of young children. It's not God allowing, it's God doing this. That's from Desiring God, John Piper's website. And so you don't walk away with that rendering of the scriptures. The Bible tells us when God is doing something and when he's not. That's biblical theology. That's not Calvinism. That's not how Calvinism comes. That's not how Reformed theology comes. That's not how doctrines of grace is, or the Tulip systematic was developed. It's all reading back into the New Testament, Romans 8:9, Ephesians 1, all these other verses, and then you have to put on your Calvinistic goggles or glasses and come back and read it into the text. It's just not true, because Joseph gave the orders here, in the biblical narrative records it as so. And thus it was done for them, according to Joseph, not God. So they loaded their donkeys with their grain and departed from there. And as one of them opened the sack to give the donkey fodder at the lodging place, he saw the money, and behold, it was in his mouth of his sack. When he said this to his brother, my money has been returned, and behold, it is even in my sack. Then all their hearts sank, and they turned trembling to one another, saying, what is this that God has done to us? There it is. 42 chapters later, Calvinism is proven to be the right interpretation of the text, because they render what's going on to them deterministically, meticulously controlled. There it is. It's in the text. It says it. Is that how we're supposed to render this right now? Even though Joseph's the one who does this, it doesn't say God made him do it. It says Joseph does this. Why? Because he's going to use this against them in the future. He's going to use this to kind of his retribution. I don't know if I should call it that, but he's using this. This is a part of his plan to make his brothers, I guess, feel what happened. And so it comes from from Joseph, I'm sorry, and it never says that it's from God. But these guys, according to what they say, our actions, what we did to our brother, that we're held accountable because we didn't listen to his cries of his distress, has come upon us. And then he says, now comes the reckoning for our blood. So we could just as well interpret this as karma as we could as the deterministic theodicy. You could. So these guys did bad, karma's coming back on them, and you would have all the same right to do so. You'd have all the same, clout, in the text to do so as you would trying to render this as a deterministic theodicy, when up until this point, everything they do is this, we did this, Joseph did this, Jacob did this. Do you guys hear what I'm putting down? You can render it this right here. What is this that God has done to us? And you can take that one part, and then you can apply it to all the texts like they do with Romans 8, with Romans 9, and then just ignore everywhere else where it says who's responsible and who actually did it and what God does and what God actually is responsible for. And so we got some stuff going on here in the comment. Let me break in here real quick because we're about to switch gears and then finish up this one. And so they said Kevin Thompson, 1611. I would give Leighton flowers. I wouldn't give Leighton flowers the time of day. King James only. I like Leighton, actually. I think he's a good guy. I'd love to do an episode with him. He really, I have no quarrels with Leighton. I feel he's a lovely brother who explains things well. Kevin Thompson did show up in about stealth Calvinism that we're pretty eye-opening. I had no idea they were that sneaky, for sure. I thought mainly cults like Seventh-day Adventists were dishonest like that. No way. I'll get into this at the end of this about how sneaky they are and what they're actually doing, even on the field where I am in this country again, but all over the place. We call them closet Calvinists, just like, you would have a closet homosexual. Probably most people are familiar with that, where they are truly one way, but they're in the closet. They're hidden because they're ashamed, because they don't want the connotation that it brings to them. Maybe even for more innocent reasons. They're just like, hog tied basically because they have money in their um, they're the largest organization. So if you're in Acts 29, which is a huge church planning network, they'll fund basically anything that you need if you join them and sign on the dotted line that you're Calvinist. And so there's one of those in my city here, and they literally wanted me to sign on the dotted line. I was like, I can't do that. I would have no ministry fund problems if I would have signed, but because I felt it was an attack on God's character, God forbid. God forbid I'd sign something like that. So they are super sneaky. The person here does not teach it from the pulpit, but then when you prod him on it, he will come out and say it. He won't like proclaim it from the pulpit, but he'll try to teach it sneakily. And so that's just how it goes. That's just the nature of the beast of Calvinism, which is why we're doing all of this. Because, God, I guess because they think God foreordained and God is who's the greatest deceiver of them all. Well, it's the Calvinist God. It's Allah, and Allah is the Calvinist God. They are the same. I mean, basically, it's the same spirit. 5 pillars of Islam, 5 points of T.U.L.I.P, deterministic worldview, no assurity of salvation, no assurity of salvation. We have a book on this. John Calvin in the Quran, and that is in the works. We have to get through the first couple books that I've already written, and then that one will come out. And so the first one's the Advent book. If you want it for free for a review, I'll send it to you. Just send us an email at thecalvinistcontradiction@gmail.com. Let's close this up. It says, when they came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan, they told him all that had happened to them, saying, the Lord of the land, spoke harshly with us and took us for spies of the country. But we said to him, we are honest men. We are not spies. We are 12 brothers of one father. One is no longer alive, and the youngest is with our father today in the land of Canaan. Again, we're honest men, but in the same breath, in the same sentence, they're big fat liars. So take it for what you will. I guess in the Calvinistic worldview, who's the greatest deceiver of them all? It's Allah. So it's just Allah. It's just Calvin's God. It's just, this bologna sausage theology's God who's making them do this anyway. So they are righteous, honest men in their determination. And so the Lord of the land, said to us, by this I will know that you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers with me and take grain for the famine to your household and go. But bring your youngest brother to me, that I may know that you are not spies, but honest men. I will give your brother to you, and you may trade in the land. Now it came about, as they were emptying their sacks, that behold, every man's bundle of money was in the sack. And when they and their father saw their bundles of money, they were dismayed. Their father Jacob said to them, you have bereaved me of my children. Joseph is no more, and Simon is no more, and you would take Benjamin. All these things are against me. Doesn't sound like this guy is ascribing everything to the Lord. Sounds like he's ascribing these things to bad circumstances. It sounds like actually he's ascribing all these things to the other brothers. But I guess we're supposed to just render it that it's everybody, that it's just God, because of Romans 8:9, way down the line. That's how we're supposed to do this. Every single Calvinist that we talk to does it that way. So then Reuben spoke to his father. Then God made Reuben. No. Then Reuben spoke to his father, saying, you may put my 2 sons to death if I do not bring him back to you. Put him in my care, and I will return him to you. Again, we supposed to render it? And then God made Reuben speak to his father, saying, "You may put my two sons to death, or God will put my two sons to death if I do, or God will make you put my two sons to death if I do not bring him back to you." Put him, make God put him in, God, would you put him in my care? And God will make me return him to you. It's even hard to even fathom or talk about when you have to do this kind of spiritual, theological rendering gymnastics to make things fit that aren't supposed to be there, because it's not reading the Bible as narrative. It's reading the Bible as baloney sausage theology that you're reading into the text. This makes no sense. But Jacob said, "My son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he alone is left. If harm should befall him on the journey you are taking, then you will bring my gray hair down to Sheol in sorrow." Who would do that? Reuben would do that, not God would do that. Okay? So that's what we're trying to prove here, is that what the biblical narrative authors want to ascribe to God, they ascribe it to God. And then all the other things are not supposed to be rendered as meticulously controlled or decreed from the Lord. It's just not supposed to be that way. You wouldn't do it with Dracula, the book. You wouldn't do it. And this is the thing. In Calvinism, Dracula, this receipt, Madame Blavatsky's satanic work, Aleister Crowley's satanic work, Anton LaVey's satanic Bible are all on the same par as this, because this is not effective unto salvation, where you could, okay, don't get on me, Basil, because we're not teaching from the Bible anymore. John 20, 30. John 20, is it 30 or 31? That all these things are written, what? The whole of the Bible, so that you may know that Jesus is the Messiah, and that by believing you would have life in his name. That's why these things are written. But in Calvinism, that's not true. That cannot happen. You cannot read. It's not effective unto salvation. It's not effective unto knowing who God is, which is the whole purpose of the Bible. We believe this book is for us to be able to read and know who God is, know what God wants. Why? Because it ascribes to God what is God's, and it ascribes to man what is man. But Calvinism says that's not true. Calvinism says that everything in this book was written for God's glory, or everything that's written in this book is ascribed to God for God's glory, even burning babies to Baal. This receipt was written for God's glory. Madame Blavatsky's satanic Bible, Anton LaVey's satanic Bible was written for God's glory. And you see how the devil gets elevated into God's slot, and God becomes the demiurge, the evil one of Gnosticism, where Calvinism is comes from Augustine. And so, Chris, yes, I like Leighton too. I really feel like, I know that a lot of people out there, I've talked to them, they say, "Oh, Leighton, he's a liar. He never had a Calvinistic church that splits." Well, I would say, if he says he did, I believe him. And that's the thing, is that Calvinists completely, and they regularly, and I don't know, King James only, again, I'm I'm supposing that maybe it's something else with Leighton that you don't like, or maybe just the way he teaches, which is fine. But I feel like he has defended the text well. He inspired me a lot to do what I do. And also, it seems like a good guy. And I take him at his word. If he was a part of a Calvinist church split, I was a part of basically a church split, kind of, but it was when me and my friend, we planted a church, and then we're both leaders in the church, and he says, "Well, we're becoming a Calvinistic church now." I said, "Well, none of the people in the congregation know this, and I am not a Calvinist." And there was a third pastor who was with us, and he just rolled belly up and said, "I'll sign anything. I'm kind of done with all this." I said, "You're crazy. I'm breaking off of this." And so I bounced. And still, everybody in that church does not know that they're a Calvinist. I literally sat, hey, Chris, listen to me. This is the sneakiness. I sat down to have some whiskey with my friends and my brother, who's my best friend. He was a part of a Calvinistic church. And we sat down with the leadership of that church. So it's like 4 or 5 guys. You have like the accountant guy, you have the worship leader at that time, you have the main pastor there, you have the associates pastor, who's my brother. We all sit down there like, just talk with me. Like, they asked something about John Piper. I said, I don't like John Piper. I think he's deceitful. I just don't like him. I don't like how he preaches. Maybe he's the greatest guy in the world. I don't like him. I would put no weight on him just because of the Calvinistic stuff. And the worship pastor at the time literally said, I've never heard anybody talk like that about John Piper. And I said, well, this is the first one. And he says, yeah, I don't like him either because he's Calvinist. I said, you guys are Calvinist. And then literally the the finance director, I think he was, or the general manager, or whoever he was, he goes, we're not a Calvinist church. And the lead pastor sitting there, and I said, you better talk to this guy about this. So yes, they are super sneaky. They don't even tell their staff. Can you believe this? I'm sitting there having to tell the staff of an Acts 29 Calvinistic church that they're a Calvinistic church, that they're a Reformed church, because of a closet Calvinist who doesn't have the balls, the kahunas, to fess up what he truly believes because of the ramification that it's going to cause in his congregation. That tells you everything you need to know about this deceptive, trash heap, prime for the toilet, dung theology, that flesh, get a tenable one, because you cannot live out Calvinism consistently with the Bible. Why? Because these are the words of life. These words are inspired, and they're different than every other word, every other book. I have books. They're different than my books. I have, I ascribe a lot of weight to the Second Temple period. Israelite writing, so like Enoch and stuff like that, which I've got right here. I think those books are super informative because they inform the biblical writers and New Testament writers to write what they did. But I don't put them on the same page as this. This is the inspired word of God to reveal who God is. The Satanic Bible is not that. This piece of paper is not that. My own books are not that. John 20:31. These things are written that you may know that Jesus is the Messiah, and that by believing you would have life in his name. That's the point of this book. That's why we say Calvinism is baloney sausage. I love you guys out there. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Where is Calvinism in the Biblical Narrative. And we will see you again probably tomorrow for one last episode before the weekend. So love you guys, and I'll talk to you soon.